With any fandom, whether video games, movies, TV shows, books, there will always be elements of the lore that go unanswered. A lot of us fans wind up with a ton of questions that we're just dying to get answered with more content, but here's the thing though, not all of those questions should be answered, as it's part of the fun to let your mind wonder and use extensive imagination. This is also why it is so important for authors to let go of their story at the right moment, which is why I also advocate for no more How to Train Your Dragon, no more Harry Potter, and initially I said no more Hunger Games, but Suzanne Collins had something else to say and found a way to make it work. That's rare. With this in mind, I have here a list of questions about the prequel book, The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, that don't need to be answered. Hey y'all, I'm the Geek Apprentice, still raving about this amazing book, The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. As aforementioned, when you get involved with any fandom, you're gonna wind up with questions and inquiries. In fact, unless it's like a continuity or story error, this is a sign of a well thought out fandom because it leaves the player, the viewer, or the reader wanting more. And without a doubt, more storytellers need to stop giving in to this wanting more and allowing it to just end, so long as it's not a this story was lacking sort of way, which is just a problem with the content itself, not necessarily that you need to add more. But again, forever singing its praises, but The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes does this super well. Anyway, here is a list of my own questions that I have gotten since reading this prequel that don't need to be, nor should be, answered. Is Coriolanus Snow related to Fulvia Cardew from Mockingjay? Keen readers will have honed in on the name Livia Cardew in this prequel. She is a fellow classmate of Coriolanus and a fellow mentor for the 10th Hunger Games, and if last names are anything to go by, she's somehow a relative of the capital defector and assistant to Plutarch Heavensbee, Fulvia Cardew. At the end of the book, Coriolanus talks about how it never would have worked with Lucy Gray anyway, because he needs someone that he hates, someone who won't sway his heart, which means he doesn't want emotion involved. That's easy for him to do, he doesn't have empathy anyway. He throws out the name Livia Cardew as a decent candidate for his future First Lady, so that very well might have happened, but since Livia would have taken on his last name, it's obvious that Fulvia cannot be a direct bloodline descendant of the two of them, but maybe of like Livia's brother or something. You never know. You never know. You get what I'm saying. What happened to Lucy Gray Baird? I touched on this in the last video, but Lucy Gray Baird's fate is clearly meant to mirror her namesake song. The little girl in the poem disappears and it's unclear what happened. And the way Lucy Gray's story ends is pretty darn similar. We don't need a definite answer to this. It's clear that Suzanne Collins intended for her story to be ambiguous in its ending, just like the song. So I guess that's sort of an answer, actually, when you think about it. Her ending is the same as the little girl's. A mystery. Works for me. Speaking of Lucy Gray, what happened to the name and concept of the Covey? Okay, obviously, the reason this name never comes up in the trilogy is because the prequel came out after the trilogy. Now, as far as we can tell, that's just the name for that specific group of musicians, not like a chain of musicians, if that makes sense. It's natural to assume that since it was foreshadowed that music would be banned from the Hob, that the group would just fall apart and the name with it. You would think the story would be passed along through their family bloodline, but given how restricted and censored speech is in the districts, yeah, it's possible it just died out. Who knows though, maybe there's a random neighbor of Katniss's way down the line who happens to remember their mother telling them about their great-grandmother who happened to be a part of a band named the Covey or what have you. I mean, you can throw in a lot of different stuff here. So I don't feel like this needs to be definitively answered because you can pretty easily logic your way through it and give your own explanation without it feeling like a gap in continuity. How does Coriolanus Snow rise to presidency? Frankly, we were already told. In fact, we were told in basically the same way that we were told in Mockingjay by Finnick Odair. I'm serious, we see the first glimmer of Snow using his serpentine ways when he alludes to poisoning Dean Highbottom at the end of this book, and at the end of the trilogy, Finnick says he was such a young man when he rose to power and such a clever one to keep it. How? Poison. I personally interpret that as Finnick Odair saying he had an informant tell him that poison is how he came to power in every way. We don't need specifics, and frankly, I don't want them. I believe it was smart on the part of Collins to leave it a little bit ambiguous, but at the same time clearly pointing to what would happen. We've been reading in his head for 500 pages. We have a decent idea of how he works. I like the mystery of not knowing every little detail, and that's part of the fun of being a reader, learning how to fill in the blanks in a good way that's based on what you already have. How did the song The Hanging Tree get passed down to Mr. Everdeen if Lucy Gray was the only one who sang it, only sang it once, and it was banned right after? This is the exact topic of my previous theory video. To sum it all up, the song had to secretly be passed down till it got to Mr. Everdeen and thus Katniss, probably only through direct bloodline. No one recognizes the song, though the rebels do latch on to its very potent lyrics. Lucy Gray's ending is a mystery. However, we know that Maud Ivory, a Covey from the Seam, is able to memorize songs after only one listen. She's the perfect candidate to be Katniss's great-great-grandmother. And no, not her grandmother, because 10th Hunger Games to 74th Hunger Games, even if everyone in the scene was having kids at 20, 25, there's just still too much time. That it just doesn't make sense. It has to be a few generations. However, we don't know for sure how this song got passed down to Mr. Everdeen considering its censorship, but it makes you wonder. What happened to lead to the eventual rift and downfall between Tigris and Corio? Oh my gosh, the moment I was sure this was the same Tigris as from Mockingjay, this question has pervaded my mind ever since. And yes, it is clear as day that this is the same Tigris from the final book. Her stature, her career choice, the fact that she sneaks pieces of raw meat. Some say that Tigris in Mockingjay is too young to be the same Tigris, but first of all, you can't go by the movies, and second of all, you know that they had some sort of plastic surgery or serum to make them look younger. Anyway, these two, cousins, so close seemingly, what happens to end up with Tigris being in the position she is by the end of the war? I mean, obviously this was a one-sided relationship. Tigris puts her heart out there and does everything she can to help her cousin Corio, and Coriolanus, well, he feigns feeling sad because he probably should feel sad, but let's be real, it's all calculated and he doesn't really have that much empathy. I've seen many comments from other people wondering the same thing and theorizing about what might have happened. Did Snow tell Tigris what happened between him and Lucy Gray the moment he got home? Was it something he lied about and waited for a long time? Did she find out on her own? Either way, we know Tigris ends up becoming a stylist for the games, and I imagine she was somewhat sweeter, kind of like Cinna, maybe still a little bit capital brainwashed, but leaning more to be like Cinna, you know. But at some point, something happened and Snow kicked her out, in a sense. It's very possible she approached him and was like, this is not okay, we've got to stop this, and simply because she's his cousin, he decided, okay, I'm not gonna kill her, but you can't be a stylist in the games anymore. I don't know. It makes me so mad and sad for Tigris, but it also makes sense. Tigris says specifically that Snow thought she wasn't pretty enough. Wouldn't she have just been fired by a game maker at some point? How does she know it was Snow specifically? We don't need an exact answer for this. It's good to leave us wondering. Makes your heart just absolutely break for Tigris considering all that she did for him. My final question. How much are the films gonna mess up transposing the contents of this book? Oh, the shade. Seriously though, I'm concerned. I mean, Francis Lawrence did a great job with Catching Fire as well as Mockingjay Part 1 and Part 2, but those were easier they weren't like this prequel. This prequel is very philosophical and has certain types of content that Hollywood's not gonna like unless they just completely overlook it and try to pull up little things and blow them up into a big thing and completely miss the entire point of the book because it doesn't fit with what they like. I'm just saying, we've seen it happen before. In Mockingjay, it was a tiny thing, and I'm still frustrated, even though I know that movies are never going to portray the books well, so I don't know why I'm getting upset. I'm not upset. I'm just concerned. Now that was a run-on sentence. I know Suzanne Collins has a close tie to what goes on with the films, but how much say does she really have? I don't know. I try not to expect the movies to be amazing, but, you know, the other ones were pretty good, so there's no way to know. There's no way for me to know. They'll probably just focus on Snow and not the actual ideas of the book. And kind of like with the others, not being in Snow's head is going to be a disadvantage or will probably make people sympathize with him more than is warranted. Ooh, you know, they won't be hearing his calculated sick thoughts and, I don't know. They might find a workaround, I don't know. Always a tough transition, so I hope Suzanne Collins gets her way. We'll see. Alright, so those were my several questions that I have about the prequel book, The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, that I don't think should be answered. Let me know in the comment section below if you have similar questions about the book that you also believe should just be left a mystery and go unanswered. If you enjoyed this video, consider subscribing to the channel to make yourself a part of the geekdom. You can check out my stuff on Instagram. I have a Twitter, but I don't use it except to post when I'm doing a live stream, which is every Monday and Thursday at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Currently working through the Wind Waker, but we'll probably be going on to the Pokemon Expansion Pass thing come mid-June, so look forward to that. But anyway, that is all for today. Thank you for watching.